You're watching RTÉ One. It's time now for the main evening news with Ken Hammond.
A Dublin taxi driver is killed in a car crash involving a stolen car. Westmeath men charged following the hijacking of 2 taxis in Castlepollard. 3 Donegal Gardaí arrested by Carty corruption inquiry are released without charge. And if you think these images are shocking, American safety campaigners take their message a stage further. Good evening. Gardaí have named the taxi driver who was killed in a car crash involving a stolen car in Dublin last night. He was 30-year-old Robert McGowan from Galtymore Road, Drimna in Dublin. A youth who was injured in the crash remains in a critical condition in St James's Hospital. 2 other teenagers who were also in the stolen car are said to be in a stable condition.
The taxi driver, aged in his 30s, was travelling alone without passengers in this cab just before 4 a.m. when this Honda, believed to be stolen, ploughed into him at high speed near the Sunset House pub in Summerhill in Dublin city centre as he passed through the junction of the North Circular Road and Portland Row, killing him. Gardaí say shortly before the crash, 2 of their patrol cars from city centre stations were rammed by a car travelling at high speed in the same area. 3 men travelling in the Honda were injured in the collision. One of them is said to be in a critical condition in St James's Hospital, while the other 2 are in a stable condition in the Mater Hospital.
8:15 this morning, total devastation. I'm here all that length of time. I've never seen anything to upset as much. I mean, the whole area is just, we're stunned, we're totally stunned, and commiserations all around to the family of the bereaved and whatever. It's beyond words.
Gardaí say they received reports of a car travelling at speeds of up to 100 miles an hour through the city centre early this morning. 2 patrol cars approached it in the Fairview area, but it smashed through just before this accident took place. Ray Kennedy, RTÉ News, Summerhill, Dublin.
3 men from County Westmeath have appeared at a special sitting of the District Court in Mullingar to face charges in connection with the hijacking of 2 taxis in Castlepollard last weekend and the false imprisonment of the drivers. All 3 have been remanded in custody to appear at Granard District Court next Friday.
Taxi driver Martin Fagan and his colleague Michael White were collecting fares in Castlepollard last Saturday night when 3 men wearing balaclavas hijacked their cars, robbed cash from them and later set the vehicles on fire. One of the cars being used, a Mercedes, was burned out. In Mullingar District Court today, 3 young men from County Westmeath appeared to face charges in connection with the incident. 18-year-old Paul Kerrigan of Barradrum Street was charged with 2 counts of robbery. 20-year-old Declan Sullivan of Kilmore Street faced 1 similar charge. And alongside 19-year-old Kenneth Murray of Barradrum Street, all 3 were charged with false imprisonment. Kerrigan and Murray were also charged with hijacking. All 3 accused applied to be released on bail at today's court hearing, but Superintendent Philip Lyons objected. He said the Gardaí were concerned that 3 men might interfere with witnesses in this case, and he told the court that since the hijacking incident last weekend, another man had been forced by the 3 to drive them out of the jurisdiction. Mr. Hughie Nolan, the owner of the taxi company, also gave evidence, saying he feared for his family's safety if the 3 were released. Judge John Neelan refused the application and remanded all 3 in custody until Friday of next week at Granard District Court. Ciara Malooly, RTÉ News, Mullingar.
A man has been killed this evening in a traffic accident in Tipperary. 4 others who were injured are being treated in Our Lady's Hospital in Cashel. The accident happened on the main Waterford to Limerick road between Cahir and Clonmel. 2 vehicles were involved. 3 Gardaí, including a sergeant, were arrested in County Donegal this morning and questioned by members of the Carty inquiry team, which has been investigating allegations of corruption against some members of the force in the county. The 3 Gardaí were later released without charge, but a file is now being prepared for the Director of Public Prosecutions.
The three Gardaí were arrested shortly after 8 o'clock at various locations in County Donegal this morning. The sergeant and two other members of the force were taken to Letterkenny Garda Station by officers of the Carty Inquiry Team, which was set up under Assistant Commissioner Kevin Carty to investigate allegations of corruption against some members of the force in the county. Those allegations are now the subject of the Morris Tribunal, which is due to begin hearing evidence in March. The three Gardaí arrested today were held under Section 4 of the Criminal Justice Act 1984, and it's understood they were questioned about making false reports and wasting Garda time. They were held for 6 hours and released without charge. Files are now being prepared for the Director of Public Prosecutions. This morning's arrests bring to 6 the number of Gardaí arrested by the Carty team, which was established by the Garda Commissioner almost 3 years ago. 5 civilians have been charged as a result of the ongoing inquiry. One, Bernard Conlon from Sligo, has been found guilty of making false statements to Gardaí. To date, just one Garda has been charged before the courts. Sergeant John White of Dreenan, Ballybuffet, has been charged with the unlawful possession of a firearm at Burnfoot, County Donegal in 1998, with making false statements to Gardaí and with attempting to pervert the course of justice. Eileen Magner, RTÉ News.
The US has dismissed reassurances from North Korea that it has no intention of manufacturing nuclear weapons. The White House said that North Korean diplomats had failed to address key issues during talks with former US Ambassador Bill Richardson, and it warned against Pyongyang's intention to restart test-firing ballistic missiles. Yesterday, North Korea provoked international condemnation when it announced that it is to pull out of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. And still in the United States, all prisoners facing the death penalty in the state of Illinois have had their sentences commuted to life imprisonment without parole. Republican Governor George Ryan made the announcement, which affects 156 inmates, this evening in a speech in which he roundly criticized capital punishment. Yesterday, Governor Ryan reprieved 4 prisoners on death row in Chicago, saying he believed the men were innocent. He's to leave office on Monday. 4 men have been charged by British police with producing chemical weapons after the biological poison ricin was discovered at their North London flat last weekend. The men are described only as North Africans and were among 7 arrested during a raid by anti-terrorist police last Sunday and follow-up searches on Tuesday. A 5th man was charged with lesser offences. All 5 will appear in court on Monday. The Loyalist paramilitary leader Johnny Adair is to begin legal proceedings next week in an attempt to overturn the Northern Secretary's decision to return him to prison. Adair was brought back to jail last night for breaching the conditions of his early release under the Good Friday Agreement.
There was a palpable air of tension today around Johnny Adair's heartland of the Lower Shankill in West Belfast, with extra security patrols in operation amidst fears that violence might erupt following the Loyalist leader's arrest and return to jail. This afternoon in Maghaberry Prison, Johnny Adair was officially told why he'd been rearrested. Security chiefs believe that since he was freed 7 months ago, he's been dealing in illegal drugs, directing terrorism, money laundering and acquiring and distributing weapons. His closest associate, John White, who visited Adair in prison this morning, said he believed Adair was being used as a scapegoat by the Northern Secretary, Paul Murphy.
Johnny Adair done his best to not get involved, to use his influence here in West Belfast, and yet he's been returned to prison. And these 5 people who are sitting, orchestrating and ordering people to be killed are still roaming the streets. I think it's an absolute disgrace, and it's unfair and it's unjust.
As it stands at the moment, Johnny Adair could be kept in jail until January 2005, although his supporters say he hopes to be out a lot long before then. On Monday, his lawyers will begin the process of seeking a judicial review of the Northern Secretary's decision through the courts. Brendan Wright, RTÉ News, on the Shankill Road, Belfast.
The wife of the European Central Bank chief Wim Duesenberg has described Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories as inhuman and accused Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon of provoking violence. Greta Duesenberg made her comments urging an end to Israeli occupation during a controversial visit to Palestinian President Yasser Arafat. Dutch and Israeli officials said her remarks were biased, and Jewish groups said they verged on anti-Semitism. The ECB chief's wife heads a pro-Palestinian activist group in the Netherlands, and she was quoted in a Dutch newspaper this week as saying the Israeli occupation was worse than Nazi Germany's occupation of the Netherlands. At home, unions and employers engaged in a long day of talks today aimed at securing a new national pay agreement. A government spokeswoman said limited progress had been made in the course of the day. Discussions will resume between the two parties tomorrow.
Unions and employers spent 8 hours today poring over texts drawn up by the officials at the Department of the Taoiseach in an effort to find a way forward for a new national pay deal. Earlier, Joe O'Toole of the Irish Congress of Trade Unions said these talks were the most difficult he had ever seen. The parties sat through lunchtime, breaking up at around 7 o'clock this evening. As they emerged, union representatives offered a small sign of hope.